They're both finalists this year, but many of you are here for the first time, and you may not know that that's not unusual for them to be in that finalist room. They both have a connection with the chisel and palette, the famous chisel and palette.
Palette and chisel.
Palette and chisel.
That's all right.
Whoops.
Yeah, that works.
I know. But the attribute that they share that I love so much is they both paint.
It's so good. And they're like, oh, thanks, Scott. It means a lot coming to you. Since you say this every single day you come in here. It was like, and then we all painted together the palette chisel with Richard Schmid and Guzik and all of these great artists that came together. My wife Susan, joined us, and we were all painting. You'll see in Richard's book, the one that just came out, so many paintings that we painted all together. The ones that Richard, and we're like, oh yeah, I have that version to this side or to that side of the painting. And then he also had paintings of all of us, you and me and Sue. And so this is like kind of a reunion for us. Getting to paint together again.
We painted for a little thing at the palette chisel a few years ago, a fundraiser.
Yeah, we did paint together.
And then we're going to do it again next year.
Next year.
But besides that, I think we haven't painted together for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah, we're usually like in Scotland or other places, we'll be painting, we're off painting our own paintings and stuff. We're sitting there.
Now we're starting to see each other. We want to start a romance back up.
Did it end? I don't remember. He didn't send me a text.
That was in my dreams, Scotty. That was in my dreams. Anyway, so what the title of this, I guess, was Which Way to Go, and we thought that me and Dan Spricky would have like definitely two different approaches. And because Scott's piece is kind of already covered, I think we'll see two different approaches again. And I didn't know which way I wanted to start, so it's always like, which way to go? Which way do you want to start again? There's a lot of things that maybe I'll talk and paint at the same time, is that okay? There's a lot of things that I would consider about which way I want to go on a painting. And a lot of it is like the lighting and what the, you're going to talk to soon, right? Okay. So right now I know because I only have like strong shadows in a couple of places that most of the way I'm going to turn the form will be either chroma, because most of the value is about the same. So I can turn a lot of the form on his face by using color. Because we live him just, he's got a shadow here, a shadow here. He doesn't even really have a shadow underneath his lips, and he has, because Alejandro's eyes are dark set, he's got a little bit of shadow in his eyes. So that tells me that this is going to be turning the form with color, or it'll be turning the form with very subtle values. Right? I mean, this might be a question you might want to, maybe you can expand upon, but do you think that there's something that's going on in our time that we are like taking human beings and like there's a lot of like disintegrating people in, there's like a big bunch where they'll have like part of the faces removed, and it's, you know what I'm saying, like there's a lot of that happening. If you guys look on Pinterest, you know what I'm talking about? It's like if you were, in fact, I'm sometimes struggling with wanting to adopt that, where, you know what I mean? Can anybody describe what I'm talking about? You know how there's a bunch of big abstraction left and the face is just somewhat, and they're like, there's a lot of removal of most of the people? What do you call it? Deconstruction. Yeah, there's like all this deconstructing of people. And I don't know if any of you guys are thinking about that, but I'm just wondering why.
I see that happening. You saw it in the Impressionists here, and they took it. They were starting to do it. I love Van Gogh. I was just at the National Gallery looking at those works. So you see it really starting to happen then more than any other time. And now it was really separated between the more like Bouguereau-like, the more classical, and those people were taking it, Cézanne and all these people taking it really to the extreme. And I think now people are starting to put together more and merge some of those to more of an extent. But for me, I've always liked, I can't tell you how much I always used to take pictures of, rocks or weathered rust or things like this. It's like, that's beautiful, just by itself. Now it's not art, it's just nature, an artist didn't intentionally create that. Now artists can intentionally create that as well. And realize, so for me, there's two levels. There's the abstract level, and then there's the realism level. To me, getting it correct and making it look like Alejandro or whoever you're painting, that's the emotional of the connection to the person that you've seen, that you painted. But then there's the abstract level of how then do you paint those shapes that give us that emotional reaction to that? And that's another emotion. George Carlson, who has been one of my friends forever, he did a talk once at, I think, the Autry, and when we were in a show there together, and he compared it to Chinese calligraphy. So you see brush where they paint the characters, and it's poems, okay? Now the poem itself, you read the poem, and it gives you emotion, okay, of what this poet is saying. But they also want each stroke of the brush to be interesting on an abstract level. They're not just doing it like a typewriter would do it. So when you read the poem, the way they use the brush can even go to with the emotion of the poem, of what's being said. And that's how I equate it here, is what I'm saying, my brush strokes, my technique might change depending on my model, depending on the mood of the painting. Is it going to be really thick? Is it going to be thin? Is it going to be really soft? But I wanted to work on both those levels. And you see that in Rose's, where she is using the abstract and the real at the same time, you know? And so that's my theory to that. Now, why it's happening now more than others, I think it's just because, you know, there's been time for people from both sides to kind of come together.
Start to marry.
You know, it's like when you had all the Japanese artists were separated in their own continent.
Yeah.
And then when people started to see these Japanese prints and stuff in Europe, it changed the way I mean, we wouldn't have Van Gogh, we wouldn't have all those things. They were inspired by Japanese woodblock prints that actually came off it. The first time a lot of them saw it was they were wrapping Japanese china in it to send here as just junk paper, kind of. And then when they opened up the beautiful vase they did, they're like, wow, look at this. And then it became a thing. Whistler, all these people were. So I think that's what's happening now, is it takes a little time for some of the two sides. What do you think, Kwang? You're more thoughtful than me on these sorts of things.
You guys are doing great. This is an easy job.
Say that last part?
I say you guys are doing great. This is an easy job for me.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, say something about it, Kwang.
Well, I think what happened.
But I'm not listening that well. Just so you know, I'm actually thinking about painting. And I kind of know I'm in trouble, but I'm really glad you guys just keep talking so I get some work done.
And, by the way,
I really mean it too, actually.
When we get a break for the model, you're more than welcome.
He doesn't need a
questions.
break. Alejandro doesn't need a break. That's why he's up here. I know him really well.
Well, you know, I think that deconstructive movement in painting with the figure happened after, like, somebody like Savo, what's her name? Jenny Savo?
Yeah.
Or
Jenny
artist
Saville.
like that who started doing some work and it looked really cool and she got a lot of recognition. And then there was another artist that did the face and she started to pull the shapes outside of it.
And Gail is doing that.
And Gail, yeah.
Is that who you're thinking of?
Yeah. So you know, an idea like that, all of a sudden, because of the internet, you can see what's happening. It looks really cool. You know, the coolness factor to it, you can't deny it. And so everybody started to, well, I'm going to break everything out of the line, and I think that's how it starts. It's sort of
True. The internet is widening people's view of things. You're right, because we could only see it in a museum or in art magazines.
Yeah.
Who paints, because I paint so thick that Sue is like, she'll order Michael Harding and she'll take a bunch and she'll say, fine, you can use this color, that color, but these, no, because you use too much paint. So like, big tubes of Winsor Newton and Rembrandt I love too, but I squeeze out a lot. And since I paint thick, I don't want to, if I scrape my palette every time, it would be ridiculous. I wouldn't be able to afford it. So I have on my palette all these different grays that as I scrape my palette, I put a green pile. This one I was putting on here was orange. This is kind of a green that I added some of this, I call them like gray piles, but I put them in kind of yellows, different yellow variations. And so as I scrape it, I just put them in piles here. And this palette is the one I use when I travel. It's still the one I use in my studio, but I put it on a tripod. And this is the Coulter easel. And I just really switched completely to that one for quite a while now because it's very light and portable. and it just hooks onto a tripod, any tripod, and so people are always interested in your equipment. Now for me, this works better. Sue uses another thinner type thing, a metal thing, but to me this has deep depth in both sides here, so I can have piles of these grays, big piles of them, and I can just close my palette and then it doubles the height. And they come in 3 different sizes. This is like the medium size, they have a really big one and the small one. And so just as far as equipment, but a lot of these colors, so if anybody asks me, what did you use to mix that? I don't know anymore because they've been mixed into these gray piles. Which used to be a little bit of a joke between Richard Schmid and me because he hated that. He hated that I saved these gray piles because he was very much into in school we were supposed to do these color charts, which I never did because I didn't want to spend 2 weeks not painting. But he really swore by them. If he added a new color, he would make a new color chart. So mix it with every color that he used and lighten it. And it's a really cool thing, but he would say, for him, he wants to paint, know exactly when he sees the color, he knows, it's like playing a piano, he knows exactly which notes to put together to get it. So he was like, but you don't know what's in there, you don't know what you're going to get. I'm like, I like going by the seat of my pants. But no,
you like what? You like what?
Oh, flying by the seat of my pants. But
yeah.
But I actually love the grays because they become beautiful, subtle colors. we were talking about that beforehand. And to me, I look up there and I see a color, and I'm looking for the value, and then, like you hear, I'm starting out with some bright colors.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to come over this I'm going to go into a gray pile and go over with some warm now on this blue, on this greens and oranges and things, and then I'll start working over this, okay, and mixing on my canvas. So that's pretty much my technique. Yeah. Even like something that I ended up softening up, like the painting I have in the show, her face is very soft, but when you see the paintings in progress on Sue's Patreon thing, you'll see how the beginning stage is really thick and brushy, and then I will pull it together. But then other paintings, I'll decide to just leave it like this and leave you see more of the colors. But you see how it's mixing on the canvas, so that's kind of what I go for, is doing that sort of thing.
I feel like I'm kind of approaching this that way too. I did that turquoise underneath because I've been I was at the Getty Museum in LA, and you know they have those sculptures and they're like polychromatic, like when they paint a sculpture. And there was an arm that they showed the process of how they get to make it look like flesh and make it look like skin color. And they had painted the arm, and they painted the veins on the arm in a black, okay, and then they put these transparent washes over those veins, and then it read like a blue, okay. And so I've been really interested in trying to capture that sort of those lines. Now I think it would be more, it might be more interesting if I actually was a little bit more intentional when I do those turquoisey lines, you know. And I think that might be something I would do if I knew I had like 9 hours to paint the portrait. I might intend those turquoise so they are the places where like I did this nude, nude man, and he had the turquoise veins all across his chest. And so I drew the lines in first, and then I kept layering on top of it, so it would start to create almost a sense of that skin. So I feel like that's kind of why I started with that turquoise like that, but it did, I had to quickly kind of throw some darks in there, but I think it's fun to just kind of like, you know, play and sort of see where, you know, I'm trying to figure this out, and I'm here and I'm on stage and I'm trying to figure it out. Even though it's something I'm playing in my studio, I'm even trying to figure it out here. Like I'm not going to let go of sort of this rhythm of what I'm trying to learn at home, even though I'm here. Because there's a safer way to paint than the way I'm painting, you know. And there's a safer way to paint than the way Scotty's painting, right? And we've seen a lot of it, and it's awesome. It's like it's very methodical, and I have all that methodical history inside of me. But it's interesting. To even like, it's a form of marrying also what Scott's talking about, the abstraction and like what you leave and what you don't need to say, you know. So like if you work with a little bit of chaos, it's just really, then the question becomes, what do I need to rein in? What becomes Alejandro? So those are all the things that I'm thinking about, like I'm playing. And I like to tell my students that I think about the drawing, like every painting of the likeness of a person, and I'm going to try to get a likeness of Alejandro. Maybe I'm not there yet, darling. That's okay. But in every painting, no matter how you start, no matter how like Scott's start or my start, at some point you have to rein it in. Like you have to draw if you're trying to get the likeness. And I think it's interesting to put that in different points in the painting. Do you follow me? Like it doesn't have to be in the beginning. It doesn't even have to be in the middle. Sometimes you do all your drawing right at the accuracy, all at the right at the end. And I think the later you put it, do you see if you agree? You probably totally agree. The later you put it, the more abstract possibilities you have. Like the more of that disintegration. That's the word I was looking for. Disintegration of the persons. Or they're like disintegrating into these planes and these. Fair enough.
What you're not saying is that people have such confidence that you know you can get that at any time, right?
Well,
and so you can go.
I actually think that's true because when I was in school, I took 3 years of life drawing first. Yeah. Is it break time? Yeah. Take a break. So I had three years of life drawing. I had 2 years I took on Saturdays in high school, my junior year, senior year, and then every Saturday I would take the bus down and the train down to take class at the academy when I found out about that school. And then I would go every day in the summer for 2 years and hoping to win a scholarship, which I did, just because I was doing that. My work was so bad when I started that the director of the school, Mr. Shapiro, asked me if he could have some of my first life drawings, because Mr. Park saved those, and then some when I finished, some of the life drawings and paintings, to show to high schools when they went around to talk about the school. And he said, it was the students were said, that's the most inspirational thing, because they'd show the first one, they're like, I can do better than that now. You see high school students, and they're like, and that person did this, and he finished. But what Rose was saying was so true for me, because even though I did 3 years of life drawing, before I had my first oil painting class, before I painted, I was getting pretty good at drawing at that point, okay? Measuring things out, getting things accurate, values. But when I then tried to paint and draw at the same time, like I'm doing here, complete disaster. My drawing went out the window because trying to think about mixing paints and color and everything. And so in school, I had to switch to sketching in oil painting class. We would do full figure nudes, and then we would do portraits with the palette and chisel in the evenings every day. And so, even the portraits, when we were at palette and chisel, I couldn't do it like that. Work the whole thing. So I would sketch it out. I would do a little bit of a value thing with burnt umber, and then I would paint oil on top of it. Every now and then I would try this method, but my drawing skills weren't to the point where I was comfortable enough to paint and draw at the same time and get it accurate. So as I got better, I started to switch to this method where I'm blocking in the whole thing, trying to get interesting brushwork. Because when you do it the way I had done it before, the difficulty is when you draw it out detail, and it takes you so much effort to draw it out. Even when I do draw things out in detail now in charcoal to work on a big painting, Sue will laugh because I want to block it in, I obscure everything. Oops, I think and so getting those big shapes first, and then you can see the middle shapes and the small shapes on top. That's very much my method, and you can see it in how Rose is doing it and how Kwang does his paintings. Because if you put all the details in first, you're always going to be using a small brush to paint around things. Okay? But again, it's a challenge. We're showing you what took me a long time till I started to get more and more comfortable with my drawing, to where I have never really worried so much. I do the big shapes, try to get them accurate, and then I can always rein it back and start getting my details in. Now, Richard Schmid, you might think he worked totally different than me. We, in the academy, Mr. Parks would have us go from one thing to the other as we drew out and measured it out so it was in the right place, and then just the face and just the eyes, and then measure to the nose. And even though Richard often painted would kind of block in and put a wash on and just use the eyes, he was doing the big shapes of the eye sockets, then the medium, then the small. Then he went down to the next thing. He'd do the big shapes of the nose, and the small, and then small, and then to the lips. So I'm doing all the big shapes first, then I'm going to do a lot of the medium shapes, and then the details. So it's the same thought process. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I'll stop talking. Green pile. This one I was putting under was orange. This is kind of a green that I added some of this I call them like gray piles, but I put them in kind of yellows, different yellow variations. And so as I scrape it, I just put them in piles here. And this palette is the one I use when I travel. It's still the one I use in my studio, but I put it on a tripod. And this is the Coulter easel. And I've really switched completely to that one for quite a while now because it's very light and portable. And it just hooks onto a tripod, any tripod. And so people are always interested in your equipment. Now for me, this works better. Sue uses another thinner type thing, a metal thing. But to me, this has deep depth in both sides here. So I can have piles of these great big piles of them. And I can just close my palette and then it doubles the height. And they come in 3 different sizes. This is like the medium size. They have a really big one and a small one. And so just as far as equipment. But a lot of these colors, so if anybody asks me, what did you use to mix that? I don't know anymore because they've been mixed into these gray piles. Which used to be a little bit of a joke between Richard Schmid and me because he hated that. He hated that I saved these gray piles because he was very much into the in school we were supposed to do these color charts, which I never did because I didn't want to spend 2 weeks not painting. But he really swore by them, and if he added a new color, he would make a new color chart. So mix it with every color that he used and light. And it's a really cool thing. But he would say, for him, he wants to paint, know exactly what, when he sees the color, he knows, it's like playing a piano, he knows exactly which notes to put together to get it. So he was like, you don't know what's in there. You don't know what you're going to get. I'm like, I like going by the seat of my pants.
You like what? You like what?
Oh, flying by the seat of my pants. But I actually love the grays because they become beautiful, subtle colors. Juan was just really talking about that beforehand. And to me, I look up there and I see a color and I'm looking for the value. And then, like here, I'm starting out with some bright colors.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to come over this with, I'm going to go into a gray pile and go over with some warm now on this blue, on these greens and oranges and things. And then I'll start working over this, okay, and mixing on my canvas. So that's pretty much my technique. Even like something that I ended up softening up, like painting I have to show, her face is very soft. But when you see the paintings in progress on Sue's Patreon thing, you'll see how the beginning stage is really thick and rushy, and then I will pull it together. But in other paintings, I'll decide to just leave it like this and leave you see more of the colors. But you see how it's mixing on the canvas, so that's kind of what I go for, is doing that sort of thing.
I feel like I'm kind of approaching this that way too. I did that turquoise underneath because I've been really, I was at the Getty Museum in LA, and you know, they have those sculptures and they're like polychromatic, like when they paint a sculpture, and there was an arm that they showed the process of how they get to make it look like flesh and make it look like skin color. And they had painted the arm, and they painted the veins on the arm in a black, okay? And then they put these transparent washes over those veins, and then it read like a blue, okay? And so I've been really interested in trying to capture that sort of those lines. Now, I think it would be more, it might be more interesting if I actually was a little bit more intentional when I do those turquoisey lines, you know? And I think that might be something I would do if I knew I had like 9 hours to paint the portrait. I might intend those turquoise so they are the places where like I did this nude man, and he had the turquoise veins all across his chest. And so I drew the lines in first, and then I kept layering on top of it, and so it would start to create almost a sense of that skin. So I feel like that's kind of why I started with that turquoise like that, but it did. I had to quickly kind of throw some darks in there. But it's so, I think it's fun to just kind of like, you know, play and sort of see where, you know, I'm trying to figure this out, and I'm here and I'm on stage, and I'm trying to figure it out. Even though it's something I'm playing in my studio, I'm even trying to figure it out here. Like, I'm not going to let go of sort of this rhythm of what I'm trying to learn at home, even though I'm here. Because there's a safer way to paint than the way I'm painting, you know? And and there's a safer way to paint than the way Scotty's painting, right? And we've seen a lot of it. It's awesome. It's like it's very methodical. And I have all that methodical history inside of me. But it's interesting see, even like it's a form of marrying also what Scott's talking about, this abstraction and like what you leave and what you don't need to say, you know. So like if you work with a little bit of chaos, it's just then the question becomes, what do I need to rein in? What becomes Alejandro? So those are all the things that I'm thinking about, like I'm playing. And I like to tell my students that I think about the drawing, like every painting of a likeness of a person, and I'm going to try to get a likeness of Alejandro. Maybe I'm not there yet. That's okay. But in every painting, no matter how you start, no matter how like Scott start or my start, at some point you have to rein it in. Like you have to draw if you're trying to get the likeness. And I think it's interesting to put that in different points in the painting. Do you follow me? Like it doesn't have to be in the beginning. It doesn't have to be in the middle. Sometimes you do all your drawing right at like the accuracy, all is right at the end. And I think the later you put it, you see if you breathe, you probably told you, the later you put it, the more abstract possibilities you have, like the more of that disintegration. That's the word I was looking for, disintegration of the persons. They're like disintegrating into these planes and this back. Fair enough.
What you're not saying is that
you
don't have such confidence that you know you can get better. And so you can go.
I actually think that's true, because when I was in school, I took 3 years of life drawing first. Is it break time?
Yeah.
Take a break. So I had 3 years of life drawing. I had 2 years I took on Saturdays in high school, my junior, senior year, and then every Saturday I would take the bus down and the train down to take classes at the academy when I found out about that school. And then I would go every day in the summer for 2 years, and hoping to win a scholarship, which I did, just because I was doing that. My work was so bad when I started that the director of the school, Mr. Shapiro, asked me if he could have some of my first life drawings, because Mr. Park saved those, and then some when I finished, some of the George Jefferson paintings, to show him. I went around to talk about the school, and he said it was the students were like, said that's the most inspirational thing you can show. The first one, they're like, I can do better than that now. They're like, and that person did this when he finished. Well, what Rose was saying was so true for me, because even though I did 3 years of lecture before I had my first oil painting class, before I painted, I was getting pretty good at drawing at that point. Okay, measuring things out, getting things accurate, values, but when I then try to paint and draw at the same time, like I'm doing here, complete disaster. My drawing went out the window, because trying to think about mixing paints and color and everything. And so in school, I had to switch to sketching. In oil painting class, we would do full figure nudes, and then we would do portraits with the palette and chisel in the evenings every day. And so, even the portraits, when we were at palette and chisel, I couldn't do it like that. Work the whole thing. So I would sketch it out. I would do a little bit of a value thing with burnt umber, and then I would paint oil on top of it. Every now and then I would try this method, but my drawing skills weren't to the point where I was comfortable enough to paint and draw at the same time to get it accurate. So as I got better, I started to switch to this method where I'm blocking in the whole thing, trying to get interesting brushwork. Because when you do it the way I had done it before, the difficulty is when you draw it out detail, and it takes you so much effort to draw it out. Even when I do draw things out in detail now with charcoal to work on a big painting, Sue will laugh, because when I block it in, I obscure everything in the eye socket, Oops, I did my, And so getting those big shapes first, and then you can see the middle shapes and the small shapes on top. That's very much my method, and you can see it in how Rose is doing it, and how Plum does his paintings. Because if you put all the details in first, you're always going to be using a small brush to paint around things. Okay? But again, it's a challenge. We're showing you what took me a long time until I started to get more and more comfortable with my drawings, where I have never really worried so much. I do the big shapes, try to get them accurate, and then I can always raise it back and start getting the details. Now, Richard Schmid, you might think he worked totally different than me. We, in the academy, Mr. Parks would have us go from one thing to the other as we drew out, and measure it out, so it was in the right place, and then just the face, just the eyes, and then measure it to the nose. And even though Richard often painted would kind of block in and put a wash on and shoot the eyes, he was doing the big shapes of the eye sockets, then the medium, then the small, small. Then he went down to the next thing. He did the big shapes of the nose and the small heads and lips. So I'm doing all the big shapes first. Then I'm going to do a lot of the medium shapes and then the details. So it's the same thought process. I hope that makes sense. So yeah. Oh, we're not on page right now. You'll see it when you do it. You see how some of that orange shows through now from the canvas underneath, okay? So I can put those gray flesh tones on, and then I go through something. So I'll go back and forth through the painting, and then you always have that if you feel like I'm getting too pink or too red, or that's the problem when you're painting a portrait. It's so warm. In the local tone is whatever the model's face is, or pinkish or orangish or whatever. And so sometimes you'll go back and forth. Now he has a lot of cools with this cool light, a lot of greens and things. So I put some of the orange and I put some green on top of it, and then more gray and flesh tones. And I'll do the whole painting. I'll go back and forth, but it can keep you from getting too orange, and it's so hard to get that little bit of a green influence, you get so used to seeing it that it's hard to get away. So sometimes I'll just start with green. This time I had orange because his face is very cool and has that greenish. So that's how I'm crazily thinking.
But I want to just say something, because I know some of the people here have been in my workshop, and when I teach, one of the things I tell them is students will come in from like a landscape painter and they'll have their canvas completely covered in their burnt sienna, like a super hot.
You can take a break.
Well, you were talking.
Oh, he was back? Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'm going to talk, I'll tell this while I paint, if that's okay, instead of turning around. Is that cool right now? Just because I'm a little troubled, so I want to pull it in. Let me anchor in just a little bit more before because look at, I'm painting with Scott, it's kind of scary. I mean, because he's so good. Look at his...
you can probably zoom in a little bit about this area because I'm just going to be working on that for a while before I get to the background. So,
yeah, that's going to be really neat. I kind of want you to sit here and watch Scott.
I'll watch you.
But I just want to say this just from what Scott said about starting with this kind of opposite color, or that's dominant, that's up there, and starting with it, like let's say the pink grass or the orange grass with the green, knowing you're going to put the green grass on top of it. When I teach, I tell my students that it's good to kind of like, if you need to draw it in, I tell them to draw it in with the dominant color of the scene that they're looking at. Not to draw it in with something with this hot orange red family. If we're working with a local color object, gray, warm, which is what Alejandro is, and then we have a blue light on them, I think you should draw it in with some sort of color that will fold into every decision you make. Not doing what Scott's doing until you actually understand that relationship or that dynamic, that you're painting the color of the light falling on this form. Okay, and that form has a certain local color. So if it was an orange, it's an orange with a blue light falling on it. If it's an Alejandro, it's an Alejandro with a blue light falling on it. His white shirt is different local color from his blue vest. Do you follow me? So I'm telling you, so when I have students who come from maybe a different, like a sort of a habitual kind of a burnt sienna, draw it in with a burnt sienna, I see that first decision to actually start to throw that cool color on top of that warm takes a lot of boldness, like what Scotty's doing. Or I call him Scotty because I've known him a long time. Scott's doing. But so when you don't quite understand the layering, because oil painting, it takes a while to even be able to paint as thick and generous as both these two do. I'm painting much thinner. When you get up here, you'll see my paint quality is thinner than both of these guys, where they generally live in their paint. And when you're younger, and you're not younger in age, but younger at the time behind the brush, I feel like it probably is more useful to start to understand the problems that you're solving, that you're looking at first, before you do too many deviations. Does that make sense? So if any of my students are like listening to Scott and going, well, Rose says the opposite in class, I just want to say that everybody, when we're teaching or when we're talking about these ideas, I think if you really put all the teachers together from this entire week, there's a real commonality and a harmony in everything that we're saying. And we just have like different, isn't that what the name of this workshop is? It's which way to go. We have different ways of getting there, but there's, like, as I was saying with Kwang, that you can put the drawing at any stage of your painting. okay? Where your accuracy to likeness. In any stage of your painting, you can do the same thing in your approach, right? But it's knowing that you're going there. And so when you're a beginner painter, the materiality is also a lesson. Like how to move the materials around is a challenge. And trusting that you know how to lay, like how light. Look, right now Scott is actually blending his paint with a brush that is
very slightly knocking down those ridges.
That's right. He's knocking down the ridges. He took that. He took his scraper and his. If you saw the gesture he was doing, it wasn't aggressive. In some places, he was even modifying, as if when you draw a line with a pencil and you pull and you push to get a darker and a softer, right? His sensitivity to as he's laying the material of the paint on top of it is so advanced, okay, that a younger student doesn't quite know how to, all the ways to lay that brushwork down, fair enough? And how to leave that, especially in alla prima when everything's wet to wet. So so how do you modify that underpaint, that first stroke, that first hour in your third hour, okay? Becomes a challenge without getting chalky, muddy, dirty, and not knowing. Do you see what I'm saying? So how do you mix the layers of paint? So this idea of dominant color of the scene that you're seeing is kind of a way to kind of assist, knowing that everything I'm putting in, you guys are following me what I mean about the dominant color of the scene that I'm looking at, right? Does that make sense? So for sure, nothing in that scene is that orange. You see that? In his scene, in this.
Well, Scott put it in.
But I know, but Scott put it in. That's my point. My point is that Scott knows how to lay the next layer on top of it, and he knows how to pull it back in and out, and he knows what.
It's like what Rose, you see her doing with these strokes. She's doing it more with lines.
I'm doing with lines.
Okay.
He's doing.
And I'm usually with thicker paint and mixing in.
That's right.
But one of the important things that I learned in art school was the fact that Mr. Parks really taught me, because I first was doing pastel when I would do color. Yeah. All right. And what happened was that I kept thinking, and I didn't have a lot of money, he knew it, I was trying to get bigger and bigger pastel sets because I couldn't get the right color for this flesh tone or this thing or whatever. And he finally, he kept saying, you have to mix it, let the eye mix it on the canvas. I didn't really know what that meant. And I would go up to artists and I'd say, do you really see that color up there? I don't see a pure green or a pure blue or pure red. And it was really confusing for me because for thousands of years, that's how artists thought, until you had the impressionist idea of letting the eye mix things. So when someone finally showed me, I think it was Amy Behrens with pastel, when I was working on pastel, a really great classmate of ours, a painter. She just took a little thing and she just said, if you're doing a flesh tone, here, you can, and Mr. Parks was already he took my pastel box away and he gave me one of those things you get from the drugstore with pure red, yellow, blue, and white and black. And he said, work for this for a few months. I thought, I'll have to mix it up. But Amy also then showed me, you can mix pure red, pure yellow, and everything, and then as they overlap, they start to turn into flesh, even though you still see these little spots of color. So any color that's not pure red or pure blue or the primaries. So if you're doing purple, you can put down a stroke, you can mix red and blue together and get that value and put it up there. Or you can mix it up and you can put down the pure red and the pure blue in little dots, or dry brushing, or how Rose is doing it, where she's using lines, or how I'm doing it, where I'm kind of mushing things together and pulling out. So you see, then the eye blends it together, like when you go and see Seurat or Monet. So any gray can be broken up into as pure a color as you want. Usually, I'm having only a few spots of pure color, so it might be a slightly warmer purple and a slightly cooler purple, maybe a little greener, and I'll keep adding to it. I'll look at the model and see, it needs a little more greenish influence, a little more ochreish. So you don't have to repaint that color. You can just, like if you have the shadow in a tree and it's very cool, and the sun's hitting it, in that green, and the green in the light is a warmer green. Sometimes as you're painting, you don't really, it turns out that they're the same temperature in the shadow and the light. You don't necessarily have to repaint the entire thing if you just get few influences of a blue in that shadow and a few influences of yellow in the light. All of a sudden, it will look like the right temperature. So that's very much what both of us are doing. I'm not seeing pure orange, pure green. I'm seeing his flesh tone, and I'm thinking, what do you can look at your palette, what am I mixing to get that flesh tone? And then just say, hey, let me mix it up here instead.
Yeah.
It'll be more interesting. And it actually looks a little more real a lot of times because we don't realize all the things we're seeing. Like if you take a photograph and zoom in on all the pixels, you see the pure colors that are making that grid. It's the proportionality of those different primaries that make it. So you can do it, some do it to an extreme extent on here, like Van Gogh, and he's just, or you can do it to a lesser extent. So yeah, I don't want to confuse you when I put bright colors on there, because I can bring them back as I can mix these together and they'll become, really accurate to what's up there.
What I'm observing are two artists who have years and years and years of experience just playing. That's what I'm seeing. When you have that much understanding of values and drawing and all of that, then you can get to a point where you can take chances like this. It looks, and they know they're gonna. It's like a juggler who's one step behind the accident all the time. You never fall.
Say that last part again.
You're a juggler who's one step behind the accident. You're never going to drop the ball, but it looks like you are going to. But it's really not to make me nervous.
No, I'm not.
But no, but that's I'm just amazed, and that's what it is. To me, the spirit of painting is play. If it's, I don't want to know what I'm going to do when I get into the studio, but you have a premise. Like in this case, you have a model like this.
Yeah.
And it's light and shadow and all that. But they're taking chances with paint, they're scraping, they're putting harmonies of colors down that you wouldn't expect to work. I mean, can you imagine Bouguereau working like this, right?
But you can keep, both the way Scotty and I are working, because we believe that you could just keep layering the paint. We could actually get to a Bouguereau if we just had enough time. Do you see what I'm saying? Like but we're just setting the stages.
Yeah.
So.
But Bouguereau wouldn't start like this. But I can see
you might be a little bit worried.
They have enough experience to take this to a finished state like a Bouguereau painting if they wanted to. Scott tried to explain all these color discoveries that he's had over the years, and he could do this and that and the other with flesh tone and trees and so on. And that's his experience. He could teach that, but it wouldn't be the same as.
Well, it was all shown
yourself.
Yeah, as you playing yourself. Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
It was all shown to me by other people. So, all of these things you pass on to other people. It's and you pass it on, to someone else. It's really exciting.
So what happened, and it's interesting that we're talking about this, is just before we started today, Scott came up and Michael Harding had 5 new colors. He thought, well, you want to just try them? So what you're seeing me use are colors I've never used before. Wow. And I'm actually right now in the middle of this demo seeing what they do. And so I'm checking their transparency, their opacity. I'm checking their chroma. I'm checking how strong, how intense they are. So like this purple here, I just put down on my palette. It looks like the right purple I would want to do for that under layer, but it was so transparent, it just went right through, which is, okay, that's a good idea. Where will I use it? Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe not here, but, so it's like it's kind of, I don't know, maybe when we've been painting for so long, it is actually more entertaining for us to kind of paint wrong. Right? Or by the seat of your pants. Don't you think? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I used to say to my students, I go, a real artist wouldn't do this. You know what I mean? It's like, you're just like, if I was a real artist, I would,
No, I think it's the opposite.
But yeah, I know we do, right? Ultimately, that's the truth. But it's not like how you would be if you were conservatively trained and abiding by your training.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, as much as I stressed about trying to get the right color when I was in school and even after that, Mr. Parks would always say, the color doesn't matter as long as you have the temperature and the value right. And that's really how I think about it now. Because you can use it, and Sue has done a whole bunch of these things on our Patreon site stuff where she'll just take randomly a 2 colors, one, that's the opposite on the color wheel, and show the values and look at what you can get. And so I don't really stress about color. It's more the value and the effect that it's going and the mood that it's giving me. And as long as it's in the correct value and edges, and you're not going crazy with the temperature as far as the warm versus the cool. But like I said, Sue will go even way beyond that and just say, you know, as long as I've got opposites, I don't care. And that's why a lot of times I'll change my pictures to black and white to paint from them. That's how we used to paint when we were out of the academy. And I started working from photographs for the first time. I would print them in black and white in a dark room, and I get good values. And when I paint now, I will have color some up there, but then often I'll just turn it to black and white. And then usually for me, at least half, if not earlier, halfway through any other paintings that I'm doing, big paintings, I put the photo away and I don't look at it again. Usually I'll take a couple week break. On the painting in there, yeah, it was quite early that I set it aside. Once I had everything in there correctly, you know, drawing and stuff, and then what happens is I start copying the photograph too much because I'm so used to copying, trying to get things correct, and it stops me from thinking, what would make this painting better? I'm still thinking, what do I see up there? And so that has become a big help for me in really letting go and thinking about what really is necessary in this painting, not just because it was in the photograph. And so that's been a huge switch to me. And again, I will change the color, I will change, you know, put things in shadow or take things out, or just, you know, go off in fanciful directions with things. And like when I have the show, you know, I didn't intend to add those purple flowers with spots of light in the background. My first idea was to leave it totally, you know, it was so moody, and I wanted some of that. But that all happened in those, you know, really months, because I would set it aside and then bring it back out. It was so frustrating, keep changing things. And it was in those months when I was not looking at the photograph at all. And I didn't look at it again until, I didn't even at the end look at it again, so until we put the video up there. But I really think that's an important thing to remember, because my teacher used to say to me, he'd come up and say, you know, why did you, if it was like in a figure drawing or something, why did you make that value there? Or why did you include this in it, you know, in your drawing or painting? And I'd say, well, if you look and you squint, that's the value. He said, no, I understand, and that's mostly what, when you're starting out, you need to learn how to get it exactly the way you see it. He said, but now you're trying to do art, and what is your center of interest? Are you really interested in the neck? Or this hand down over here? Do you want it as light as your center of interest? It's like, right, okay. And so you start to rework things. It's again, the painting in the thing was, her face was as light as her arm and hands. But once I put the photo, I was like, no, I need to darken that so that it slowly darkens and my interest is up in the face, you know. So those are just tricks too, and things that I've really gone to more and more. That have helped me, whether it's outside or wherever. If the conditions are absolutely perfect, you make sure you have something, the wind or something, or you're not a morning person, because if it doesn't come out, there's only one thing to blame.
Yeah, I always just blame the model.
Get ready.
I think what's missing that's not being said, I think, because I've watched these two paint for years. I've idolized them for years.
We've painted together so many times.
Well, not that many times, Scott, but a friend of mine, Paul Maddalina, has a little painting that Rose Frantzen, when they painted together with Schmid, she had thrown it in the trash, and he pulled it out, and he showed it to me. I hadn't heard of Rose at that time, and it's like, wow, it's so beautiful.
Is it a little sketch on a vellum piece of paper?
Yeah, it's a little. It's a man in a black jacket.
What? Oh, it's a man in a black jacket.
Yeah,
oh.
It was just beautiful, and I said, who is she? But it was so naturalistic, and then it was like Sargent did it. It was so beautiful. And then Scott, I saw a post that he made, and a painting he did with green and burnt sienna or something ridiculous like that. Just two colors, and it was so full and rich and great values, great drawings, and it looked like it was full color. And that blew my mind. But all of that to say, these two can have fun like this and explore and push color. This is where they are now. They're not saying it, but what they have, if you didn't see the work in the past, it's very just really beautiful, solid in every way, value, color, drawing. That's what we all struggle with most of the time to get a good painting.
Problem is softening that cheek. Boom, 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 boom. Pound it. And I got that idea from Stephen Assail, right? I took his workshop, and I was like, he didn't have this brush, but I found, I got this from Silver brushes that I won some prize, and I was like, oh, I'll try that one. And it's really great for doing the pounding on those soft edges as you transition those. So that's what I use it for. This one, do you want to borrow it for Scott?
I don't even know what you're talking about. That looks like
so yeah, I'm not ready for it yet. I like it when I have a little more paint build up, you know. So I'm still, so I don't want to do it too soon, but there's a place where it's like the only way to soften an edge, and it's like a pound edge, and I'm like, oh, because there's places in the transition. So
what do you miss when you hit it?
What?
What do you miss when you hit it?
I never miss. That's not true.
At least not in the morning. I mean, not in the afternoons.
I think most of painting is getting yourself in trouble and learning how to get yourself out of it. You never make a mistake in a painting. You always make the move before your next. That's just the move before your. That's just the thing before your next move. Do you see that? So
It is cold for me.
is it not good? Do you want to re-say it?
I said that if you make a decision, it's always correct.
If you make a decision, it's always
Always
good.
correct.
I think I like mine better.
I actually do too.
Mine's kind of hopeful, right? But it's like it's the move before your next move. So you do this, and it's like you see, and then you okay, now it needs this. Now it needs this. Now it needs this.
You can give me credit for it. That's fine.
Well,
I love that.
I mean, it's a bad filter.
Which is what it means is you're living right in the moment, right? You're living right in the moment. This one brush stroke. You make a decision, and then the next decision. What do you do after that, right?
Yeah, but
it informs the next one.
Yeah, it informs the next one, right? And even if it feels like you think you made a mistake, like, and that's why I don't know if anybody has my videos, but you hear me say, "Oh, that's okay." Right? Like if I make, oh, that's too red. Oh, that's okay, because now I know I just have to do this. Right? Oh, because here's the thing, if I know it's a mistake, right, then I know that there's a solution. And I feel like, that's why it seems like it's just the move before the next decision. So maybe I just married your thing in
That's
philosophy.
Really beautiful, Zen. I love that because, you know, what I see stop a lot of artists and students is they're in a state of like, oh my God, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You know what I mean? Like you're defeating yourself before you get far enough in the painting, and you're not getting to just discover. And that's what you two are doing right now. It's amazing to me.
I mean, I kind of
be watching things happen.
Yeah, I actually, go ahead.
I kind of feel like it's often like, you know how you have those mazes that you have to walk through that are like, you know, made out of corn or things like this, and you see a flag far away in the center, and you got to go in, and you got to go through the maze, and there's all these blind things. You know your goal.
Yeah.
Okay, your final goal.
Yeah.
But
it's right here.
You're too afraid to make any wrong turns. You'll never really get anywhere. So you got to go through some blind houses. Say, okay, now I know this didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, now this didn't work. This didn't work. And so that's kind of how I see painting is constantly.
The next break.
And the influences that you have. And George was a very big influence on me. He had gone to the American Academy as well, and he did pastels and stuff at the Taramari, but he mainly did sculptures for a very long time. That was his main thing. And he's really my favorite sculptor out there. And kind of using textures and big shapes like in painting. So we became friends because we were doing he did a retrospective at the Gilcrease Museum years ago, and they asked me to do a demonstration. There was a very young artist. And so I got to meet him in person, and I talked about how, and I loved his work, and he talked about the Academy, and he'd had Mosby like Richard had, and all that stuff at that same time. And so when I would go out west, and we started doing shows together and stuff, but when I would go out west, I liked to a lot of times just take a month, and I would go and camp on my own, and paint out in the desert, or with, you know, on Indian reservations, and maybe go on pack trips at the end with Matt Smith and a bunch of friends of mine. But I would stop by George's in Idaho, and he's always like, "Come by, please. We'll work together. We'll draw together and stuff and sculpt." So I would stop there for like a week a lot of times, and I'd stay with him and Pam, and paint. We would go off in canoes and get stuck in marshes and have to get in our underwear and get out and push the canoe out of all these Russian stuff that we got, all these fun adventures, okay? And he would show me, it was the first time I sculpted, he showed me, we would do sculptures for models sometimes. It was really fun to learn all that stuff. And it really influenced me in a lot of ways, and we would talk art and philosophy, and we read a lot of the same books and things. So he's always calling, and I'm always calling, and we have, the new book, and we're reading it. Did you read the new Jared Diamond book? This or that. And, but one day, after years, when I would paint, he would just draw a model. And then one day, when we'd have figure models and stuff, or portraits, and he would draw, he said, I want to paint. It's so fun. And he would trade me for a lot of paintings of his, and I would trade him for sculptures or drawings and things. And in fact, that first shot of him and his easel, all the paintings in the background, all those sketches all around them, those are all paintings of mine and Guzik that he's over the years, and he still keeps them around there. He says, to remind me of these life, sort of these textures and stuff. But he had painted it. He didn't have an easel back then. And one day he said, I'm going to paint. I want to paint. I hadn't painted in oil. I hadn't done many oils in 30 years. So he got his easel out, and he found his paint tubes. They were all frozen solid. So I laid some paint out for him. And we're painting, okay? His first painting he's done in 30 years, and he really hadn't painted much. He was mostly pastel guy. And at one point, he was looking, and was like, oh my God, all that thick, juicy paint that you use, I love it. Could you give me a little lesson, on how to approach a painting? And so I went over and looked at his painting, and he was doing more thinner, dry, like he had paint on it, but he put a wash on it. He was using kind of textured dry brush on top of each other, and it looked very much like his pastels. And I said, George, this is so great. I mean, because the drawing, the values, everything are great. I love this. You don't want me to show you how to paint my technique. I mean, this is already, you're applying what you do with the textures on your everything. And he's like, all right, he's like, I guess, and so he's like, but this is so fun. And so I left, when I went back.
What was
I went back home. So he was like, yeah, I'm having so much fun. So I left, I went home, and 6 months later, I get in the mail, because George does not use computers and anything like that. Pam will do things. If they email Pam, and I'll call him. And so he sent me an 8x10 thing, and it was all photographs, 8x10 photos that had been printed out of a painting. It was in the thing. It was the two wings in the sky, and he has it in his book and stuff. So the first painting he did, he said, since you left, I've been so excited about painting. And I did this painting, and I was thinking about our conversations, and I was finding my own technique, and it was like using palette knife and using dry brush and these shapes, and it was like the first painting was his masterpiece. And he was like, I've been so excited to show you, so I called him, it was so fun. And he says, actually, and he put it in the Pre-West show, and he won. It sold really well and everything, and then he called, and when next time I visited, he said, I want you to know that he was doing a big commission for like a life-size statue of a person for some university. He said, this is my last sculpture. And because I'm getting older, my hands, and the foundry is hard, he says, maybe I was just ready for that, but I'm done sculpturing. I've done it, set everything I am, I'm only going to paint. And then he started doing these paintings that you see, all these landscapes. And when I go out there, sometimes we would paint together. Well, he would come out with me when I would do like a plein air painting, sometimes I would go, and he tried it once, he's like, this is too fast, I can't get it, I can't get the accuracy that I want for doing my big paintings in the studio. So he went to a method of, he sketched out all the shadow patterns, and then he had all those color charts for like Richard used and stuff from Mosby, and he numbered them all, like, a couple hundred numbers for each one, because they're different values. And he'd go out there and he'd sketch out this beautiful sketch of the shadow, just the outline, and then he would put numbers in, and he'd look up at his color chart so that when he went back to the studio, the photos don't give you the right color, so he would have that as a reference. And actually, I joked him, I said, I'm going to out you as a paint by number painter. And so then, a few years ago, I was painting with my friend Tim Lawson, who we all went to school together with as well at the academy. And he was in Bluff, Utah, and he was doing that. He was doing a little sketch and taking these color charts out and looking at them and numbering them. And he said, I'll use this in the studio if I do a bigger version of this. I said, wow, that's the same thing George does. He said, oh yeah, I learned that from George. Oh, wow. It's so fun how all of us, now I learned all this from George. Wow. And then, I don't know if he learned much from me, but seeing you, it like spurred you to do this, and he really wanted to work with textures, because when he worked with pastels, it was flat. He would get a textured feel. There was a little bit of a texture, but it was like, now he's like really into texture with his own way. So it was so fun when I found out they were going to give him this award. It was like, oh my God, I actually haven't had a chance to call him. I'll call him on my drive home. But so that's to say, yes, Richard was an influence, Mr. Parks was an influence, Rose was an influence on me, all these students who were ahead of me in school were. Every painting you do is a collaboration with all of these people who went before, who you paint with, who you see on the internet, and then you take it and you use it for your own way. You take those tools you learn. Like just George was saying, it's like, George, you don't want to paint like me. But he still keeps those paintings up there as a reminder of some of the fun textures or whatever he likes about them. But it's interesting, and you want to leave yourself open to that when you see these things. It might not be the way you want to do it or the subject you want to do, but it's just, I can never really take credit for anything I do. It's like, you want to like make this list of like hundreds of influences, that went into this painting. But even if you're doing this method or his one thing you should be able to stop at any time and still have something nice. Yeah. Don't leave things down there that are wrong. Yeah. Okay? And I agree. It's interesting how and he used to always still say, when he'd take pictures for his books and stuff, he'd say, he seemed to think that it was always better in just maybe 15 minutes or the session before he finished, and he had gone a little too far. He always would look at the photos and say, gosh, I wish we would have stopped then. So sometimes that time limit can help you.
It does help with that editing that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of like having the time, really.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's like,
if this stopped right now, I still would feel that I had something, because I don't have a lot of mistakes up there. There's more things I want to do, but it's kind of, it's kind of that's the thing is I'm trying to go slowly, and he would say, if you see something wrong, correct it immediately.
Yeah, right. Never leave anything knowingly wrong on the canvas.
Right. Because otherwise it's going to affect everything else, even if it's just subconscious.
Did you hear him say it that way? Never leave anything knowingly wrong on the canvas. Is that how you heard it?
I trust your memory more than mine.
You do?
I remember Richard saying one time, he said, he approaches the painting like if he dropped dead in the middle of the painting.
That's right.
We still see that. Exactly right. That's exactly the idea.
That's not how I approach a painting.
No. It's really interesting. I looked at the model from up front, and his beautiful sculptural face and global skin tone. I thought, man, I would never have started my painting like that. It felt like a Velasquez or a Sargent, you know what I mean?
He does look like one.
Yeah, he looks like that's how.
You wouldn't have started like this, right?
No, you guys are quick.
I know. It might be a waste of a beautiful model on stage.
No, I love seeing this. Whoa.
Well, just want to see what it does, right? I'm probably going to take 2 or 3 steps to get there. But
don't try this at home, y'all.
I just need to do it for just a bit to loosen up so I can go back in and focus. It's probably a little too blue, but that's okay.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
Now somebody on one of the breaks had asked you about how to learn how to do very thick paint into thick paint, some of these techniques.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I often encourage people who are wanting to paint thicker, because it's all really about values and stuff, but technique is something to do, but don't try it on like a complicated portrait or something with all this drawing, some new technique. It's very difficult to learn because there's a lot you're going to be more hesitant to really just go for it and go crazy, okay? So for me, I practice a lot of these thicker things. Right from the beginning, I like to paint thick, but it would go out of control because I couldn't draw and paint at the same time. So what Nancy and I used to do a lot of still lifes in between the palette chisel and the academy, and we would do them with palette chisel before the late session started. And that's where I felt a little freer to set up some very simple objects and to experiment. I would do ones all with palette. I would do ones with this way, really thinking the thing. And you feel a little more free to try it. And then later, as you kind of master more of the technique, you can then apply it to something like a portrait with a lot of drawing. And then also, when we do so many of these life studies, in Sue's downtown studio with models. No matter what we're doing in the studio, we'll have a couple days and we do these quick life studies. And so I have lots of them from years and years ago, and some have just become they're kind of boring and academic. And I've done a few of these, and we put them on our Patreon sites where they're older pictures, they're just kind of academic. And they're thoroughly dry, and I can even varnish them. And then I will say, I'm going to repaint the whole painting with really thick paint or techniques, or just play with it and go more surrealistic or whatever. This way you can do that in the painting. You've already mapped out your drawing and values of it, but then at the end, you can just, if you don't like it, you wash it off with Gamsol, and it completely will have the old painting still there. So you won't have that stress of, oh, it's wet. Do I really want to experiment? And it's like, oh, I really ruined it, So, sometimes I'll do that 2 or 3 times, different versions on the same painting. We filmed a couple of those and put them on. So to free you up feel freer to experiment, knowing you have all of the real drawing and values underneath. So that's kind of the best advice I can give for trying to, get out of that. Try something totally new as far as the technique.
A couple of technical things that I learned just standing and watching paint. I love what Rose has done with her palette. It's on an angle, and it's mounted onto a tripod. She can lower it, angle it. Never thought of that.
Sue does that too. I use a really old one I used to use when I would shoot 8x10 view camera things. So it's metal and it has a crank. And so we have this she has this big glass one, and I put a screw in it for the top, and it's got a big flat top, so that it's more stable. And then she can crank it up, and then it's just like an old tripod, so you can crank it, tilt it, so that if she's getting fluorescence hitting it, because she uses the glass palette, I use the wood palette, so she has more of an issue of the glare.
What's the stand, Scott?
It's a very old, heavy thing that they used to use in like the 20s and stuff for big, huge view cameras. So it's not something you buy now. It has a big crank. It's a really metal thing. It's really heavy, but they don't make those really anymore. I just got it from a secondhand camera store in Chicago years ago. So they were. You can still probably find them because those used to be the main cameras that people had to use to shoot view camera stuff. So.
Using the glare sometimes has a benefit. And I learned that there was a sergeant painting at the Met, probably when I was like in my 20s, I saw it. And the sergeant had painted a black dress. He basically just used black. But when he had the leg coming forward, he took this brush stroke and went across the form, and that caught the glare. And then where he wanted it to be more shadow, he dragged the stroke vertically. And then on those in-betweens, right? He has that, that's a different question. Which way do you want that to lay? But that's how he did it. So you can use the glare to actually help accentuate your three-dimensionality, the illusion of three-dimensionality. So, fair enough, Scott? And that's what you're also talking about, giving some depth inside that dark of yours, right?
And also just like people will say, oh, you paint so thick, but really I'd say the majority of the painting is not thick. It's more washy, or I'll scrape things, even the painting in the show. There's areas that are thin in the middle, but those really thick strokes, just as really bright colors, will catch your eye, and that's what you remember a lot of times. But I always want that variety between textures. We were taught in school there was 4 elements to painting, and it was
color, value, drawing, and edges.
Right.
But
And then
What did she say? Belly
I'm glad we got her in the morning when she's tired. I'm a morning person.
Both of us landed that texture was a thing that we weren't given. It was like it wasn't something we talked about.
I think the first person who really said that, and I don't know if he said it to me or I heard it in a talk he gave, was Kwong.
Yeah.
That texture is that 5th element.
Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, I mean, you gave it a talk maybe at Northwest Roundup or somewhere. Maybe just said it to me.
Well, texture, what I mean by that is not necessarily just the surface thickness and thinness. That's only one way to get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Pattern creates quality.
Oh, I never even knew that you were also.
Like, look at VR, and when you can see his paintings, he'll weave colors together to
I love
create a
VR,
pattern
yeah.
for one value, and then
Oh yeah,
and then
patterns,
pattern
absolutely.
for another. So you got
Connecting patterns, that was part of, we were always taught that, we all use different languages, but we were taught that was part of like composition and design. You know, they didn't include it in these elements of like drawing and painting, but I agree, that is absolutely part of it, yeah.
Scott, I was talking to Scott about his. I love the surface texture on his face right now, and I was telling him how Adrian and I were just admiring that beautiful face in the painting that you have as a finalist, and how refined it was. But there was a lot of life and paint, and you're telling me that it started kind of like this.
Oh, it started really thick, like this part, really, really thick. And like I said, I put photos of it in progress on our Patreon. Sue put it up this month. I had photos I took through the whole painting. So you see the photos I used, and then you see the drawing of the sketching out charcoal, changing my mind about drawing, moving things around, and then blocking in. It looked really cool. I mean, it could have been more of a plein air study, you know? And you could have stopped there, but I had in my mind that I knew I wanted to make this really subtle and very, very refined for the face, and then have textures and things out of there. So yeah, so I start really thick though, working these things, and then I'll soften it. I'll take this brush. What is this one? This is a number 6 Rosemary Company long filbert, series 278. So it's kind of round. Okay, it's rounded at the edge here. In fact, I really saw this particular technique. We would do the softening, but I didn't really even notice this technique until I videotaped Richard making that video of Michelle Dunaway. And he would go to like things like the lips and stuff they wanted to soften, and he would just do this. He would just slightly.
Yeah, that's what I did with that big
Like you're talking about that. And so it just slightly that. So and then sometimes slightly doing this, but you can still see the colors. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise you'll overmix things and they'll become just too soft, you lose the form, and they can become mud. And mud is just over mixing, really. So that painting started super thick, and then the second day I softened some things down quite a bit, and then it dried, and I paint over it and over it. I mean, I painted over that thing so many times. Most of my paintings, the bigger paintings, I just seem to not be able to get it right at the first go, and I keep redoing things. I'll set it aside. I've probably got about like 10, 12 paintings going at the same time in my studio now, which is completely different than how I used to paint. I used to only like to finish a painting before I started another one for years and years. And now I'm experimenting a lot, and I want to let things dry thoroughly in between stages so that I could go back over things and not have cracking. And so I've got a lot of paintings going. And that's how George works too. He has usually 5 or 6 going, and he'll put them in textures and then he'll let them dry and go over them.
That was worth the price of admission.
There you go.
That was great.
What was that?
I often wonder how Feshin got all of his wild texture, and that paint that looks like marble, and then it looks perfectly natural.
Yeah.
When it's done.
Yeah.
Mixing that.
That's the life behind a painting that sometimes even the great old masters really they didn't know this, and they have great drawing of that. They lacked
This texture.
this wonderful subtleties that go on.
Well, and some had. I mean, like that's why Velázquez and Franz Hall were so, kind of rediscovered by the Impressionists and started by Carlos Duran and the Impressionists, was seeing some of that quality, which, and of course the time, what was popular at the time was that if you could see the brushwork, that was considered an unfinished painting. And so the salon and the people who did that really would just, say, well, this just shows that this person, is lazy. And that's really what they would think. They're lazy, they wanted to finish it. And I know that even when I started out, I had some galleries that I would send things to Scottsdale, and they say they love it. The clients wanted to know if you could finish it. Brush strokes, and so it's kind of funny how that happens. That idea of finished means you can't see the stroke of the artist, or you don't have that abstract element of the brushwork, and and how that just changes. Of course, people like Van Gogh and Impressionists. That's why they couldn't get in the salon show. They kept getting excluded from it and kicked out. They never won any awards there. I mean, and then the painters like Messier, how they were the golden ones. If you ever read that book, the Judgment of Paris, that's a wonderful one that talks about how they start out with who were the biggest artists that sold the most things and won all the awards at the salon, and how most of them have been forgotten now. And we remember the ones who were doing personal paintings, and you can see the mark of the artist in it. So it's just, again, these...
I mean, don't you think that's because we don't have the same relationship to those stories?
Hey, hold that thought. Dawn has to make a real quick...
It's
Go ahead.
Really, really, really pale person who so much of the blue veins are passing through their skin that they almost look like they're a blue pink as the local color, and the yellow, or maybe a yellow green, like this somehow. And then you get really, really, really dark black people, like really black skin, at a really dark value. That actually also sometimes is hard to see the yellow and red in it, okay? The warmth in this. But everybody in that spectrum, everyone has yellow and red as part of the local color. So then it's just like, which yellow, which red? What is that? How much more yellow? Is it more yellow? Is it more red? Or is it more blue? Am I making sense? And you may take my workshops, you may hear my videos. You know how I can go on for this route. So he's local color a little bit more yellow-green, I think, I'm not positive. And I'm local color maybe a little bit more yellow-pink. And a little bit lighter value, just a touch lighter than Alejandro. But we're both being bathed in this blue light. It's 5,000 Kelvin. It's actually a pretty neutral light. And that has a color. Everybody follow me? Mm-hmm. I'm trying to see if some of you are not.
Yes.
Okay.
We all have these ways of thinking of these, and sometimes you'll hear different artists give different explanations of the same thing, and it'll click with you because they put it differently.
Yeah.
Okay? Because this was something that very much confused me, was when we worked under a warm spotlight, and it said it's going to be warm in the light, cool in the shadow. Okay? So now it's painting all orange and all blue, in the shadow. So it's just looking for the light color. And relative to each other, you start staring at that, you start seeing more and more of the blue and orange.
Yeah.
Well, my teacher put it this way. He said, what Rose is saying, you have the two elements. You have the local color of the object that you're painting. So let's say you're painting an apple that's red, okay? If you have a warm light on it, you're still going to have red and shadow in the light, but you're going to have a little warmer red in the light and a cooler red in shadow. Now, if you switch that light to be a cool light, you're still going to have red in the light, cool in the shadow, it's about the value, but you're going to have a little of the cooler red, maybe more of a blizzard white, and then maybe it'll go more of a warmer red in the shadow, okay? Now, if it's white, like she's saying on the thing, you only have the temperature of the white, so you see it on the white. But most things all have this color. So it's not to say that you have to use blue in this, but like I said, it can be the percentage, you can move the percentage, because you're not often going to just paint everything solid one color. So you might just use the red in both, and then have a little bit more of an orangish bit mix it into that there, or just dots, or however you want to put it down, and a little bit more of the cooler red. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
The color of light affects the color of the object.
but it will always be opposite. It'll always be
in the
opposite.
shadow, but the light.
Whatever the light is in one side, it will be the opposite relatively in the other. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. Like when I work from black and white,
Yeah.
I can use any color, but I will try to keep in mind that I want to have, whenever I use the light, if I use more of a cooler color than that, it has to be the opposite in the other. So the use the same is a little unrealistic.
He's probably right, but what I like to land on is
Probably.
like this warm, cool, warm, cool, warm, cool. Every time the plane changes, it's warm, cool, warm, cool. So you've got to look, you got, or if it's cool, warm, wherever the thing changes, and that's an interesting thing. I think it's interesting to ask myself, what's the dominant color that I'm seeing? Like, what's he's local color, yellow, green, okay? And then I know, I look, so I mix it. I look at my palette and I say, which yellow, green is closest to the right value of his that I'm seeing? So I say, is it more yellow or red or more blue? If it's a yellow, blue, it's right. And how light, how dark is it?
And to really confuse you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not too much.
Then you're painting outside. You're painting with all of these things. And you have the sky reflecting.
Yeah.
It's in the shadow. And then you have the sky reflecting purple. And there's grass and it's reflecting, light is hitting that, reflecting up to this. So these little rules that we're talking about, these are to kind of understand what's happening, but I actually don't use them too much when I'm painting. This is what Richard Schmid told me, which helped me so much, okay? And my teacher, Mr. Cartersville, told us this already as well, for the figure. When you're doing values, you compare, your light is light, dark is dark, and you figure where's the value in that range. And then you expand the range, if all of a sudden there's a window in the background, seeing the sun, now the range is expanded, so the value on face might change. Same thing with color. It's relative.
Everything's a hierarchy, relationship.
When you're painting something in color, you find what's your brightest warm, your coolest cool, and you look back and forth. Kevin McPherson always says, don't make your decisions about a color or a value by looking right at it. He said, move your eye around, look at other things, so that you're then bouncing back to it. So if you only stare at one thing, your eye is going to be only comparing what's right next to it. And you'll get the color and the value wrong.
What's the easiest color for you to see? All right? And then I compare everything to that. So, and it makes it, it's not that it's easy color for Rose to see or easy color for Scott to see, it's easy color for you to see. How light, how dark is it? And ask everything compared to that. So,
I really think of the technical things. And then, of course, there's the other layer on it. It's like Mr. Park said to me, now why did you paint this way? Okay, so yes, you learn to see these relationships. And then there's another level is, well, do I want to include that?
yeah.
Is it taking away from my center of interest? Is it mess up the mood I'm going for? So I'll break it, I'll move it this way or that way. So all these things are in there, and that's why painting is so personal, and everybody will paint a different interpretation of the same thing. And I think people are always asking me, like, what things do you make up in a painting to change? I'd say the biggest things, you will change things like I'm talking about, but the biggest thing is editing.
Yeah.
What are you not going to put in?
Right.
Because which flowers you can just make them as an abstract shape so that the focus is there. I'd say editing, keep it constant, applying, softening things down so the focus is. That's probably the number one thing that I learned from school, is not painting every single thing exactly the same, exactly as I see it. So, yeah. When I was in school, we were only painting from life. I hadn't ever owned a camera, and I finally got a camera kind of when we started at college Chisel, and it was something that I always knew I wanted to use a camera, but in school it was just about learning. All right? But a whole bunch of people, it was funny, so many people, when I would show the photograph I worked from and the painting and talk about the changes that I made, these people were coming up and saying, at the porch side, that was like such an exciting thing for them. They said none of the speakers had ever talked, so they kind of knew. My friend Walter Mattia said it was something that was one of the artists that said to him, it's like, well, it's like sex. Everybody knows they do it, but nobody does it in front of the children. It's like, okay, people know that people work in photographs, but we're talking about work from life, all that much from life, and everybody emphasizes that. They said nobody's ever come in and actually show on the screen the photos that we're going to talk about, how we do it, how we take pictures and stuff. So, and it's different for everybody. Some artists don't work in photographs at all because the subjects they're doing, they don't need to, you know. And of course, I wouldn't do it from a still life or things that I could paint from life. But I always knew that a lot of the things that I was excited about painting could never be done from a photograph. And in fact,
done from life.
Done from life. And also, I also wanted to do paintings that would take, bigger paintings that would take me a long period of time. And so I really wanted to be able to have that time in the studio. And I really enjoy working from photos in the studio. Now again, we always have models really every week. We have models and we paint from life, and I'll do landscapes. And that keeps you fresh. That keeps your eye and your mind fresh on what things look like. studio by myself, listening to my audiobooks and working on things over and over and really exploring ideas and putting it, even getting a photo and then putting it away. So it took me a long time to start to learn that because I was so used to doing things in like one session from life, these portraits, that when I would do a painting that was going to take me several weeks, some big thing, I would keep working and try to finish it, and I would suddenly I'd get tired and things would fall apart.
And say that last part.
And things would fall apart because I worked too long on it and I would get exhausted. And Richard would always say, you know, we got to only work when you're fresh and take breaks. And if you're tired, don't work anymore.
Is that true?
So there's that. But then there was the other part of it was I really didn't know what to do with the camera and I wasn't taking good pictures enough. And I would look at Richard's photographs that he was working for me. He used his Hasselblad and he would then project them so that you could see them in the screen. He didn't take them as canvas, but he would, so he had full value to them. Beautiful photographs that were just, I mean, works of art. He could have been a professional photographer. And then and so sometimes he would do a photo session at the palette chisel, like in the net or other models that we would have, and we would do a little photo session when I got my camera, and I joined him. And then I started doing them, but seeing the time and effort that Richard would put into, I mean, not just like snap a couple pictures off. Okay, this is going to be an hour or two, play with lighting, try this, try poses, different things. He was, half of the battle was being done there for his creative choices. And then even if we're from life, taking time to set up what we want to paint is so important. And I have too many people come to me and they'll show me photos, and you're like, well, show me some of the others from the series. Well, I just took that one, you know? And it's like, no, Sue's filmed me in some of my photo sessions, one outside with Rose on a horse, a lady who trains girls, her granddaughters, as a horse rider. She used to be a rodeo, and it's just down the street from us. And so she took me doing 2 hours of a photo session with one of her daughters and one of her models. And all the time I take with lighting and poses. And then she did one in the studio with lighting and talk about the different types of light, quality of light, backlight, side light, wide lights, so they're softer, or spotlights. Those things I learned seeing Richard. That was really the first person I saw doing a photo session or anything. We didn't do any of that at school. And so this is all to say that you have a vision and you have to, like Sue is always saying this, and she's like, I'm just really happy that you're there when we do a model session together, especially in the beginning. We would take pictures and she'd have an idea, and then we'll take ones for that idea, and then I'll experiment, I'll have ideas, and usually it gets to maybe like 45 minutes or an hour, and she's like, I'm so tired. I think we got plenty of stuff, and I'm always like, let's see if we can, models getting tired, everything's tired, but she's always joking. It's like the best pictures are usually at the very end. It's amazing how people settle into things, and you start to get used to what things look like, and she's like, I can't tell you the number of times that we've done paintings, we would have stopped. So you have to, now that you have digital cameras, it was harder in the beginning because, we had film and I'd have to take light meter readings and, and sometimes you get that wrong. But now you can really experiment. And so I would encourage people to learn the tools of that and then push yourself to not only take more pictures, but to get models and set them up. There's a wonderful artist here who had shown me a picture that he did, and they just got into the oil paintings of America. You can shout out your name if you're correct, I forgot. But a firefighter, okay? And he said he got into OPA. It's the first one, and he said, this is all thanks to Sue, because she's been mentoring him through the Patreon thing, doing critiques and things. And she's like, it's not about, he's telling her this idea of painting firefighters and stuff, in the thing. And he was, and she said, okay, this is a great idea. It's not about technical things, but you have to, your assignment is to go to a firehouse, find one, introduce yourself to the firefighters, and spend an hour taking photographs, getting to know them. Because
she gave him this assignment?
Because he's asking you, what do I need to do to try to get better, to do the hot blood? So the higher level is stop just looking for references online and trying to make it into your own painting.
Wow.
Okay, so he told me, and I told Sue this on the phone yesterday, and he showed me the painting. It was a beautiful painting of a firefighter. He said he was there, and got to know them, he was going to take pictures, and all of a sudden the alarm went off. The firefighter grabbed this thing, he was going on, and he kind of looked back, and he took this picture, and that became his painting. And he was so excited, and he said that it's all Sue, because I would have just the fear of going up and doing this. And Sue's always, she's like that. She gets better, and she can ask Mom something, but most of the time, like, when we go to Guatemala, Kathy Anderson and them were like, Sue and Kathy Anderson and Nancy Guzik had gone there the year before, and they were just too nervous to ask anybody to pose these farmers and stuff. So we went back a couple of years ago with Kathy and her family and me and Sue, and I said, Kathy said, well, what are we going to do? Okay, what do you want to paint? I went, well, I'm going to paint people every single day because people are so wonderful in Guatemala. And Sue said, Kathy said to me afterwards, she was like, when we were running the boat going, she's like, he's not really going to be able to get along every day. I mean, these people don't even speak Spanish, you know, they speak the Mayan and stuff, and she goes, oh, no, trust me, we're going to have moms every day. And she's like, well, just to go up to people in the field, she's like, yes. And you have to get over that. If somebody says no, fine. But, so yeah, I would just go up to people and ask them and find somebody who could translate, and then we had models every day. We met all these wonderful people, and I'd take photographs of them, and I'd hike up to these houses and stuff on the caldera and stuff. It was like Lake Atitlán. Take pictures of people in their houses and pay them, and you have to get yourself out there. Sometimes you don't even know what you're going to find. You think you have an idea of what you want to paint, and then you start playing the photo section, and you go out to places, and the best things are things you never expected. But the best thing is getting to know people and getting to talk to them if you're a translator or if they can speak English. And I just have so many stories about this, and so I want to encourage people. It doesn't have to be in another country. It can be just like this person who was in town. Go talk to the firefighter. You're interested in painting this. Why not meet some? And so that was her assignment. And he said, it was hard for me, but I did it, and I'm so grateful, and it was just the most wonderful experience. Not just that the painting came out, but that I got to know these people. And so you have a different emotional level when you're painting people that you have experienced personally. And you'll paint it differently than other people will paint even that same model. So that's my lecture.
Oil sticks, gosh, I think I used them at the palette and chisel before I moved back to Iowa in '91. I was using oil sticks so I could do quick sketches in color, and it was like it's oil paint that doesn't actually have to be mixed because it's more like a pastel except for it's oil paint in a tube squeezed together with some wax, and I just really love the sensation of that it allows really for you to get a lot of gesture, and I kind of like an aggressive gesture, so it sort of you can't really make that kind of stroke, some of those strokes I do, with having to mix the brush and getting the right amount. It's as if the hairs in the brush actually make that stroke just a little bit more gentle and also a little more lyrical in a way. And so I like that visual. So it's just wax. It's oil paint mixed with wax, just a little bit of wax to keep it in that compressed shape.
Do you mainly use it at the start, or do you use it actually throughout the painting?
So I can use. I'll probably use it again throughout the painting as soon as I feel like I get there. I'm definitely going to use it again pretty soon. I was telling folks when they came up to talk to me that it's best probably not to use it. Well, I know this because I talked to the manufacturers of it, Sinelli, and you're not to use it as an underpainting that you let dry. You want to keep it a wet into wet process, or you can put it as the top layer on top of your oil paint at the end, or if you're mixing a whole area of wet paint and then you're mixing it into that wet paint. Hi, I just saw you there, cutie. Nice. Yeah, I didn't realize it was you sitting right there. So you can do it at the end too, or in the middle end, but you don't want to use it as an underpainting so it dries. Because there's actually, I think it's a little bit of a mineral oil, or a little mineral wax or something that they were telling me. So and I have oil sticks from 2 different companies, and I think of them as a B and like a HB and a 6B or a 4B. And the RF paints are really, really juicy. That green is a RF paint, and the brand, and the blue is a Sennelier. And Sennelier is like a B, like a HB, and the RF, so it's more, one's almost all oil, hardly held together with paint, with the wax. That's the RF paint. The Sennelier has a little bit more texture. So I like to use it, well, you see, maybe I think I can probably still get there. I like to use it and then scrape across it and start to keep wanting to do like really good designs in the early part, and then scrape it and have them reveal and these layers. But when I do these fast paintings, I don't really, I just go aggressive. I just go like, it's more of an emotional kind of placement of those lines, and just kind of seeing how it feels. And what I'm launching off of is just how I'm launching off the cloth that's back behind him is partly what I did. And then, as I was saying earlier, I was interested in putting the turquoise in the other skin. And I did do a lot of paintings for a while where I put the oil stick pretty far along into the process, because I actually learned color by doing pastels. You know, that's when because you open this whole thing up and there's this, you know, and like what Scotty was saying, that you needed to layer this color on top of that color in order to make pastels work. That's how I learned to do color. And so this is kind of like a little bit of a marriage of oil painting and pastel, which is actually kind of fun. You know, is that a good answer? No?
Yes, thank you. And then someone else asked for you if you would expound a little bit more on what you said about cool light on this subject and warm light.
Yeah. So
cool lights on the subject.
So what we're always painting when we are painting a representational object, which is Alejandro in this case in space, is we are painting light falling on form. And it's really important to know the color of the light that's falling on your form if you're going to paint in color. You can, you know, you also have the brightness and the hardness of the light, which, so like a north light breaks the form much more gently, so you have a lot more soft edges in that atmosphere. But you have a really strong light, the closer I get up to it, you know, the harder those edges will be. And so there's that too. You know, light has a you know, hardness and softness, and also, but it always has a color. And so it's really, so human beings are interesting. The reason why they look like, there's so many things. This is actually, take my workshop for a week, because this is what we pretty much do. But how do I say it simply? So everything has a local color. Like I'm a different, I think I am. I'm a different local color from Alejandro. Do you agree? Yes. And this is how I describe it in my class, right? And we know that one thing also. Oh, 5-minute break? Okay. Okay. So can you mind if I just do this for a second? So also, there's a local color of me, and it has a value too, doesn't it? It's all darker than white. Do you see that? And then an Alejandro has a local color and a value. Well, you got his white shirt, right? But you can see how much more of his face is darker than white everywhere. And you see the two of us together, and I'm probably a little bit more pink, a little more yellow, lighter yellow, and maybe a little bit of green in there. I'm not quite sure, right? I have to see myself in the mirror. And then Alejandro's saying local color, a little bit more yellow, a little bit more. There's always a red in it's always a yellow and red in everybody. In every single body. There's two edges of the human spectrum of skin color. You can get a really, really, really pale person who so much of the blue veins are passing through their skin that they almost look like they're a blue-pink as their local color. And the yellow, or maybe a yellow-green, like this somehow. And then you get really, really, really dark black people, like really black skin at the really dark value. That actually also sometimes it's hard to see the yellow and red in it, okay? The warmth in it. But everybody in that spectrum, everybody has yellow and red as part of their local color. So then it's just like, which yellow, which red? What is that? How much more yellow? Is it more yellow? Is it more red? Or is it more blue? Am I making sense? Anybody take my workshops? Anybody hear my videos? You know how I can go on for this browse. So he's local color a little bit more yellow-green, I think. Just I'm not positive. And I'm local color maybe a little bit more yellow-pink. And a little bit lighter value. Just a touch lighter than Alejandro. But we're both being bathed in this blue light. It's 5,000 Kelvin. It's actually a pretty neutral light, and that has a color. Everybody following me? I'm trying to see if somebody do a nod. Yeah, okay.
It's funny how we all have these ways of thinking of these, and sometimes you'll hear different artists give different explanations of the same thing, and it'll click with you because they put it differently.
Yeah.
Okay, because this was something that very much confused me, was when we worked under warm spotlight, and it'd say it's going to be warm in the light, cool in the shadow. Okay, so now I was painting all orange and all blue, in the shadow. So I was just looking for the light color. And relative to each other, you start staring at that, you start to see more and more of the blue and orange.
Yeah.
My teacher put it this way. He said, what Rose is saying, you have the two elements. You have the local color of the object that you're painting. So let's say you're painting an apple that's red, okay? If you have a warm light on it, you're still going to have red and shadow and in the light, but you're going to have a little warmer red in the light and a cooler red in the shadow. Now, if you switch that light to be a cool light, you're still going to have red in the light and cool in the shadow. It's about the value, but you're going to have a little of the cooler red, maybe more of a alizarin white, and then maybe it'll go more of a warmer red in the shadow. Okay? Now, if it's white, like she's saying on the thing, you only have the temperature of the white, so you see it on the white. But most things all have this color. So it's not to say that you have to use blue in this, but like I said, it can be the percentage. You can do it with the percentage because you're not often going to be just painting everything solid one color. So you might just use the red in both and then have a little bit more of an orangish bit and mix it into that there where it's dots or however you want to put it down, and a little bit more of the cooler red. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the color of light affects the color of the object.
Right. But it will always be opposite.
What?
It'll always be
in
opposite.
The shadow. The light
Whatever the light is in one side, it will be the opposite relatively in the other. So that's the main thing to keep in mind. Like when I work from black and white,
yeah.
I can use any color, but I will try to keep in mind that I want to have whatever I use in light. If I use more of a cooler color in that, it has to be the opposite in the other. So if you use the same, it'll look a little unrealistic.
He's probably right, but what I like to land on is
probably right.
I mean, David LaFell says it like this: warm, cool, warm, cool, warm, cool. Every time the plane changes, it goes warm, cool, warm, cool. So you got to look. Or if it's cool, warm, cool, warm, cool, warm. Wherever the plane changes, and that's an interesting thing. I think it's interesting to ask myself, what's the dominant color that I'm seeing? Like, he's local color yellow, green, okay? And then I look. So I mix it. I look at my palette and I say, which yellow-green gets closest to the right value of his that I'm seeing? So I say, is it more yellow or red or more blue? If it's a yellow-blue, it's right. And how light, how dark is it?
And to really confuse you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this going on too much?
Then you're painting outside,
right,
or you're painting with all of these things. You have the sky reflecting. Yeah. It's in the shadow, and then you have the sky reflecting purple, and there's grass, and it's reflecting. Light is hitting that, and reflecting up to this. So these little rules that we're talking about, these are to kind of understand what's happening. But I actually don't use them too much when I'm painting. This is the way Richard Schmid told me, which helped me so much. Okay, and my teacher, Mr. Parks, had told us this already as well, for the figure. When you're doing values, you compare. You look at your lightest light, darkest dark, and you figure where is the value in that range. And then if you expand the range, if all of a sudden there's a window in the background, seeing the sun, now the range is expanded. So the value on the face might change. Same thing with color. It's relative.
Everything's a hierarchy, so relationship.
When you're painting something in color, you find what's your brightest warm, your coolest cool, and you look back and forth. Kevin McPherson always says, don't make your decisions about a color or a value by looking right at it. He said, move your eye around, look at other things, so that you're then bouncing back to it. So if you stare at one thing, your eye is going to be only comparing what's right next to it, and you'll get the color and the value wrong. So, like Richard, like I had done a still life, and Mr. Parks had seen it, and this went to what Richard later would talk about too, as he said, okay, well, you have all the roses the same pure red. Did you really see that? I said, well, yeah, I mean, they're so red. And so he said, we set something up with some roses there. And he said, okay, now which is the reddest rose? Well, that one is the reddest rose. He says, right. So now everything else that you look at, you compare to that reddest rose, you know it has to be a little less. You were painting each rose individually, and it looks so red because it's next to the green of the thing. So it was like, whoa, a light went off to me. And then when I saw Richard, I don't even know if he talked about this. I'm sure he did. But you see it in his paintings of the still lives. Then when we would look at what he was painting, right, that's the reddest rose, or that's the orangest thing. It's all relative. You have to find those anchors and look around. So with all of these influences happening, it's great to know some of these things, but I don't want you to get into the idea of, I've got to figure out beforehand and do a flow chart of what colors, what light, what temperature. Most of it is going to come down to this, and it will change. If you have something super neon red, it will make other reds look grayer in comparison if you don't have that neon in there. So this is the real key, is looking and moving your eye around and squinting, comparing, squinting a little bit. So does that help? I think it's a hard thing.
Yeah, I have it three points. I'm saying very simply. What's the easiest color for you to see? All right, and then I compare things to that. So and it makes it. It's not that it's easy color for Rose to see or easy color for Scott to see. It's easy color for you to see. How light, how dark is it? And ask everything compared to that. So, let's see. Find a color I can see and ask myself what's different. Find a color I can see and ask myself what's the same. You know, how is it like, so I say ask myself to find it. Right? Am I making sense? Find a color I can see, so I'm always trying to launch off of my own relativity too. Right? And ask myself, what's different? Like, now I'm losing my own thoughts. Because I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I was just doing a really nice stroke across that cheek, and I need to get back to that. And why am I doing this right now? I don't think I've ever talked about this actually in a demo before, but it's fun to have it with Scott. I think we're definitely saying the same thing. I was just shaking my head because I don't want to have too many rules. Right? Find a color I can see and ask myself what's different. Find a color I can see and ask myself to find it.
That's mostly how I think. I rarely think of the technical things. And then, of course, there's the other layer on it. Is like Mr. Park said to me, now why did you paint this way? Okay, so yes, you learn how to see these relationships. And then there's another level is, well, do I want to include that?
Yeah.
Is it taking away from my center of interest? Is it mess up the mood I'm going for? So I'll grade things, or I'll move it this way or that way. So all these things are in there, and that's why painting is so personal, and everybody will paint a different interpretation of the same thing. And I think people are always asking me, like, what things do you make up in a painting to change? I'd say the biggest things, you will change things like I'm talking about. The biggest thing is editing.
Yeah.
What are you not going to put in?
Right.
Because which flowers you're going to just make them as an abstract shape so that the focus is there. I'd say editing, keeping things out, simplifying, softening things down so the focus is. That's probably the number one thing that I learned from school, is not painting every single thing exactly the same, exactly as I see it. So, yeah.
Nuggets.
I did not use the oil sticks on that. I was telling folks during the break that the oil sticks are not really made for an underpainting, and I knew that painting would have a lot of layers, so I just used straight paint. But I did use I did have a whole under, the whole painting was a tone, like I painted a whole tone under it because I knew I was going to be doing this layers and layers of, and having to break through. I drew my design, I scraped my design out with like those tools that you see me scraping. I pulled my design out in some of those places, and then the underpainting of that blue is what you see, and I put the dark. I put the dark on, and then I pulled that dark off for the lines. Right? Does that make sense? The layers? The background layers are closer to the periphery of the piece. So I threw it in with that. But yeah, because I knew I was going to be doing that, I couldn't do the, what do you call it? I didn't want to use oil sticks on that. Really detailed and tight work. Like I just did a commission, and all I don't know, for like 3 weeks I've been doing book titles with double magnifying glasses. I'm wearing like, You know what I mean? I'm magnifying glasses on top of these, which are also on top of contacts. And I'm doing, you know, and it's two light sources. I have a warm light source and a cool light source hitting these titles of books that he wrote. So some of them I had to put his, and so that's what I've been doing. And then I'm like, oh, I gotta go do Portrait Society, and I gotta paint a head in 3 hours. So for like the last couple of weeks, I've hired 10 models, like trying to get done, trying to get fast. Like, oh my God, I can't paint fast anymore. It's a real skill, this thing, this alla prima stuff, and it's not something you can just kind of just pull quickly. Maybe Scotty can, but
well, we're always hiring models.
Yeah, you always have to put it up.
Always doing a few models.
But it is not something you can really rest on your even all these years of experience. It really does require kind of a continuous muscle building on that. You have to go in and do a few of those. And unfortunately, I was actually just going months, and also since the pandemic, I can't tell you I'm kind of getting more like Scott. Like, I just want to work in the studio. You know, I have a photograph as a start, and then I can let it go and then just spend those hours trying to design stuff without a model, because I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm serious, I don't. You know, I want to be in there and just do this. Maybe that's why I'm depressed. Maybe that's why I need to come here.
I pretty much go through the cycle of, we'll go on a trip for a month, or even 2, and we're painting from life every day, and models and landscapes, and then I'm just so sick of painting quick paintings.
That's right.
I can't wait to get to the studio, and then I can work on longer paintings, and I'll do that for a while, and then I'm like, and we'll still be painting, you know, ones, but then I get completely sick of the studio, and I'm like, all right, we gotta go back.
That's right.
Let's go paint.
That's right.
And so it is like a back and forth.
Yeah, you want to go paint. I want to paint thick and fast, and like you, Scott.
Right.
After I've been doing these really tight,
Yeah.
so I just want to just slam something down.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Rose, Scott, Quan, I'm the bad guy. Thank you so much.
Outside of the moment,
that's what I'm saying. I brought up the thing.
yeah, his work is really good. Oh yes. Well, it is because you didn't miss anything. It's but I owe these guys a lot. So this is for you. I'm really talking of appreciation. This is
you. All right. Okay.
Hi, Sue. We miss you. I thought you were going to be here. I was looking forward to some good conversation with you. Hurry up. Dry down. Up. Down. Up.